You think danger only lives in the big concrete jungles, but your quiet suburban street is statistically waiting to become a crime scene. Step off the manicured pavement and listen to the faint, metallic rattle of a stolen catalytic converter scraping down a poorly lit avenue, while the heavy, humid air smells like burnt rubber. The American illusion of safety is a carefully marketed lie, propped up by deceptive real estate listings and defunded municipal budgets. Today, we are breaking down the 10 most dangerous states in the United States for 2026. We dug through the latest Federal Bureau of Investigation crime statistics to expose the zip codes where survival is a daily gig. The top 3 are absolute nightmares of systemic failure, but the state sitting at number 1 is bleeding residents so fast. And you might be packing your bags to move there right now because the desert looks peaceful online. No myths, no filters, just reality. Number 10 is Nevada. The blistering, dry heat of the Mojave Desert hits your lungs the second you walk away from the neon glow of the Las Vegas Strip. They call it the entertainment capital of the world, but locals know it as the neon playground of larceny. Nevada completely hides the fact that it sits on a ticking time bomb of property and violent crime. When you strip away the billion-dollar casino revenues, you find a state struggling with nearly 500 violent crimes per 100,000 residents. The local economy is entirely dependent on tourism, creating an enormous transit population and an overwhelmed police force that simply cannot keep up with the constant influx of organized crime and street-level desperation. Therefore, tourists and locals alike become walking targets for aggressive robberies and auto thefts. A frustrated resident recently vented on a community forum, saying, "They built another billion-dollar hotel, but my neighbor just had his truck stolen from his driveway for the second time this year." You are paying a massive premium to live in a desert oasis, but the local police are too busy guarding the blackjack tables to patrol your neighborhood. If you think the desert is a gamble, wait until you see the absolute chaos unfolding in the mountains. Number 9 is Colorado. 492 violent crimes per 100,000 people is a statistic after that absolutely shatters the illusion of safety. You can physically smell the crisp, thin mountain air mixing with the bitter scent of exhaust from a stolen car speeding down the interstate. Colorado has carefully curated an image of pristine nature and healthy living, but the macroeconomic reality is a total disaster. The state has experienced a terrifying surge in property crime, specifically auto thefts, reaching the 3rd worst rate in the entire country. The root cause is a massive influx of new residents that completely overwhelmed the local infrastructure, driving the cost of living into the stratosphere. Because housing costs are suffocating the working class, desperation has spilled out into the suburbs, turning once quiet neighborhoods into hunting grounds for property theft. An exhausted local captured the mood perfectly online, posting, "We have beautiful hiking trails, but you literally cannot leave your bicycle locked outside for more than 5 minutes without a team of professionals stripping it for parts." This brings up a real, unavoidable question. Would you rather live somewhere visually stunning where your property is constantly at risk, or a boring flatland where you can actually leave your car unlocked? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if a mountain crime wave sounds bad, wait until you feel the humidity and hostility waiting for us down south. Number 8 is South Carolina. The thick, suffocating humidity of the lowcountry wraps around you like a wet blanket, while the distant, sharp crack of gunfire echoes through a crumbling coastal subdivision. South Carolina aggressively sells its southern charm and beautiful beaches, but it actively hides a violent crime rate of 531 incidents per 100,000 residents. The state has historically relied on a low-wage service economy to support its massive tourism sector. But as inflation crushed the working class, the wealth gap exploded, leaving entire communities totally stranded without access to upward mobility or adequately funded social services. Therefore, Areas just outside the pristine historical districts have devolved into zones of persistent gun violence and severe gang activity. Local law enforcement is constantly playing catch-up in underfunded municipalities that prioritize tourist safety over resident protection. A tired homeowner recently summed it up on a neighborhood app, saying, "The city just planted new palm trees on Main Street, but I am still waiting for the streetlights on my block to get fixed after they were shot out last summer." If you thought Southern hospitality would protect you, the data proves otherwise. But if you think a crumbling coastline is terrifying, you are not ready for the deep systemic decay we are going straight into next. The heavy, damp smell of an impending Midwestern thunderstorm barely masks the scent of stale beer and burning rubber. Welcome to number 7, Missouri. You can literally hear the rattle of a busted muffler on a stolen car running a red light in broad daylight. Missouri is the ultimate tale of two cities, with St. Louis and Kansas City completely skewing the state into a violent nightmare. Decades of severe deindustrialization and systemic urban decay have left the working class totally hollowed out. Therefore, extreme poverty has bred a ruthless underground economy, pushing the violent crime rate past 540 incidents per 100,000 people. The local police are catastrophically understaffed, meaning property crimes are basically ignored by the system. A tired local vented on a neighborhood forum, saying, "We finally got a beautiful new park bench downtown, but someone unbolted the entire thing and stole it by Tuesday morning." The state is essentially a battleground of forgotten neighborhoods. If you think the Midwest is dangerous, wait until you see the rural nightmare hiding just to the south. The sticky, pine-scented humidity wraps around your throat the moment you cross into number 6, Arkansas. Listen to the frantic, high-pitched whine of an overworked window air conditioning unit trying to cool down a neighborhood that the city council completely forgot about. Arkansas is visually stunning, but it hides a terrifying violent crime rate of over 640 incidents per 100,000 residents. The state has a massive wealth gap, where a few corporate executives live in gated mansions while the rural counties are actively drowning in a generational drug epidemic. Because the municipal tax base is so incredibly weak, local sheriff departments are totally outgunned and underfunded, forced to police massive, empty stretches of highway. A frustrated homeowner perfectly summarized the local vibe, posting, "The police response time is literally longer than it takes to watch an entire episode of a sitcom. So we just bought bigger dogs." This brings up a real, undeniable question for you. Would you rather live somewhere visually beautiful but dangerously underfunded, or pay massive property taxes for a boring, heavily policed suburb? Drop your thoughts down below. If a rural crime wave sounds stressful, you are not ready for the urban chaos waiting at number 5. The overpowering smell of cheap whiskey and fried food completely fails to cover up the constant, exhausting wail of sirens echoing down the interstate. Number 5 is Tennessee. They aggressively market the neon lights and bachelorette parties of Nashville, but the actual residents are living in a statistical war zone. Tennessee currently battles a violent crime rate of over 670 incidents per 100,000 people. Memphis, specifically, is experiencing a total breakdown of civic order, driven by crushing poverty and systemic neglect. The state government focuses heavily on attracting out-of-state corporate money, but completely ignores the decaying infrastructure and failing schools in its most vulnerable zip codes. Therefore, a massive wave of desperation has fueled an epidemic of carjackings and aggravated assaults. An exhausted resident recently posted on a community board, saying, "They are building million-dollar condos downtown, while teenagers literally host stolen car demolition derbies in my grocery store parking lot. You are paying top dollar for Southern hospitality, but receiving a daily masterclass in survival. And if a collapsing music capital shocks you, just wait until we hit the swamp." The suffocating scent of stagnant water and chemical exhaust hangs heavy in the 90-degree night air as we hit number 4, Louisiana. You can hear the crunch of shattered glass under your boots in a parking lot that has not seen a security patrol since last summer. Louisiana is a cultural powerhouse, but it is actively suffocating under the weight of extreme poverty and decades of corrupt municipal mismanagement. The state consistently ranks near the absolute top for homicides, boasting a violent crime rate hovering around 630 per 100,000 residents. When massive hurricanes repeatedly wipe out local infrastructure, the rebuilding funds somehow never seem to reach the neighborhoods that need them the most. Because the educational system is fundamentally broken, the youth are left with zero economic opportunities, feeding a relentless cycle of gang violence in cities like New Orleans and Baton Rouge. A cynical local captured the tragic irony online, stating, "The city finally patched the massive potholes on my street, which just makes it way easier for the getaway cars to speed out of the neighborhood." Louisiana is a tragedy of misallocated resources and broken promises. We are now entering the top 3, where the numbers stop making sense and merely existing becomes a high-stakes gamble. The freezing, -20-degree wind chill slices through your jacket, carrying the heavy scent of diesel exhaust from an idling truck that has not moved in 3 days. Welcome to number 3, Alaska. You might picture pristine glaciers and beautiful wildlife, but the statistical reality of the last frontier is a terrifying, isolated nightmare. Alaska consistently ranks at the very top for violent crime, reporting an absolutely staggering 830 incidents per 100,000 residents. The state suffers from an extreme geographic trap, where tiny, disconnected rural villages are completely cut off from the main highway system. Because of this massive isolation, local law enforcement is virtually non-existent in the deep interior, meaning the state troopers physically cannot respond to violent emergencies in time. A massive wave of substance abuse and severe economic depression fuels incredibly high rates of aggravated assault across the frozen tundra. A terrified local vented on a digital message board, saying, "You call for help out here," and the dispatcher literally tells you to lock your doors, grab your rifle, and wait for the morning bush plane. The isolation that looks so romantic on television is the exact same geographic barrier that makes it a living hell. This brings up a dark, organic question for you. Would you rather live in a freezing, breathtaking wilderness with zero police protection, or a crowded, ugly concrete city where the cops are 3 minutes away? Drop your survival choice in the comments below. And if freezing isolation sounds bad, wait until you feel the suffocating heat of the deep south. The sticky, red clay dust blows across a cracked, weed-choked parking lot, mixing with the smell of cheap burnt rubber. We are stepping into number 2, Alabama. The state aggressively markets its deep southern hospitality and college football culture, but it actively hides an incredibly dark, systemic failure in its urban centers. Alabama battles a brutal violent crime rate hovering around 650 incidents per 100,000 people, heavily driven by catastrophic poverty in cities like Birmingham and Bessemer. The state government consistently refuses to fund social safety nets, leaving generations of the working class totally stranded in a cycle of desperation and underground economies. Because the municipal tax base is completely eroded by corporate tax breaks, the local police departments are massively understaffed, underpaid, and entirely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of street-level violence. An exhausted resident recently painted the grim picture on a neighborhood app, posting, "They just put up a massive, beautiful billboard welcoming people to the city, right above an alley where 3 stolen cars were stripped to the absolute frame yesterday. You are paying a heavy tax and constant anxiety, just to live in a state that refuses to invest in its own people." If you think the systemic neglect in the South is the worst it gets, you are completely unprepared for the statistical war zone waiting at the number 1 spot. The sharp, metallic smell of scorched asphalt and ozone from a burnout street lamp hits your nose the moment you step out into the blistering desert heat. Number 1 is New Mexico, and it is actively weaponizing its own systemic collapse against its residents. Do not let the beautiful, painted sunsets fool you, because this state is an undeniable, high-stakes battleground. According to the absolute latest demographic sweeps and federal data, New Mexico is drowning in over 900 violent crimes per 100,000 people. Albuquerque is not just a city, it is the undisputed car theft capital of the American Southwest, driven by a catastrophic, intersecting crisis of fentanyl addiction, severe poverty, and incredibly porous border corridors. The state suffers from a massive lack of high-wage jobs, meaning the local economy offers zero upward mobility for the youth, pushing them directly into organized retail theft and armed robbery. The police force is bleeding officers so fast that property crime is basically completely decriminalized by default, leaving the locals totally defenseless. A tired, cynical resident perfectly summarized the nightmare on a local thread, stating, "We do not even bother locking our car doors anymore. We literally leave the windows rolled down, so the thieves do not shatter the glass when they check our cup holders for loose change." New Mexico is the ultimate American trap, offering cheap rent in the desert while charging an aggressive, daily toll on your physical safety. The illusion of the American dream is officially shattered when your neighborhood requires a daily survival strategy. These 10 states prove that cheap housing usually comes with a massive, hidden tax on your peace of mind. Before you pack a moving van, you must look past the cheap tourism brochures and stare directly at the cold, hard macroeconomic data. Smash that like button right now. Subscribe so you do not accidentally move your family into a zip code that the system has already abandoned. Question everything, trust the data, stay aware,